Mandalay. The blueprint for war in the Far East, called by history the Tanaka Memorial, was drawn in 1927. It proclaimed that Japan must adopt a policy of blood and iron. In order to conquer the world, Japan must conquer Europe and Asia. In order to conquer Europe and Asia, Japan must first conquer China. 10 years later, in 1937, Japan begins to execute the plan. Shanghai, Nanking, Pankao. City by city, province by province, the Japanese slash at the vast, unyielding body of China. China bleeds from 1,000 wounds, but her 500 million people will not be subdued. China's leaders have neither planes, nor tanks, nor artillery, nor organized armies with which to stem the flood of 1 million Japanese soldiers. But with what little she has, China fights on under her leader, Chiang Kai-shek. Land is the one forbidding weapon China does have. Blast, burn, destroy everything on land, everything in the invader's path. Surrender only the scorched earth. Imperial Japan cuts 300,000 square miles out of the heart of Republican China. And China's coast is shackled to Japan's navy. 1 million refugees flee inland. The incident in China today will be war in the world tomorrow. Deeper and deeper into the interior, beyond the reach of the invaders. A mass migration toward the new capital of free China, toward Chongqing, landlocked oasis in the midst of Asia. China's sole access to survival now lies southward across the Himalayas, southward to Burma. Rangoon, Mandalay, Lashio are joined together by rail and road. From the port of Rangoon, supplies are carried north. To link China with Burma, a road is built from Chongqing to Lashio, the Burma Road. On this road hangs China's only hope of health, of life. The independent kingdom of Siam is Burma's eastern roommate. Siam, land of teak and mangrove, land of 16,000 temples. To reach Burma, to cut the Burma Road, to isolate China completely, the Japanese must first absorb Siam. Absorb it they do, without violence or resistance. Siam, already betrothed to Japan, succumbs gracefully the day after the attack on Pearl Harbor. The Japanese get their base for the invasion of Burma. Semi-Oriental ceremonies legalized the union. One week after Pearl Harbor, the Imperial Japanese Army bursts across the border of Siam into Burma. 5 months of ravaging and slaughter lie ahead before the Allied defenders are split and shattered. Into central Burma go the invaders on the road to Mandalay. Mandalay, whose conquest will cut the Burma Road. In May of 1942, the city falls. China is isolated. China is cut off from her allies. Now it is the British and Burmese who put their wealth and resources to the torch. These the enemy shall not have. The flames that were lit in China now scorch the earth that is Burma. The Allies are driven out of Burma. But the Japanese have been deafened by the sound of their own guns. For the wind is in the palm trees, and the temple bells they say, "Come you back, you British soldier. Come you back to Mandalay." In Canada, in Quebec, Allied statesmen and the combined chiefs of staff plan their return to Mandalay, to Chongqing. China, Burma, India have moved to the forefront of global planning. China must be kept in the war. Land communications must be reopened. A supreme commander is chosen to direct the campaign in Southeast Asia. Admiral Lord Louis Mountbatten. From the island of Ceylon, from bases in India, Lord Mountbatten marshals his sea power, without which no land campaign will be possible. The United States carrier Saratoga is welcomed to the Allied East Indies fleet by the crew of the British battleship Queen Elizabeth. The Royal Navy, the United States Navy, and the navies of France, the Netherlands, Australia, South Africa pool their warships to guard 7 million square miles of ocean. The mission of the fleet in these waters is threefold. Deny the Indian Ocean and adjacent waters to the enemy. Cut his communications with Burma. Protect the Allied convoys, on whose safe arrival the destiny of Southeast Asia now depends. His Majesty's Indian ship. India is a focal point in the world's communication system, and Indians have been seafarers since prehistoric times. In World War II, Indian ships and sailors fight in the Battle of the Atlantic, in North Africa, at Sicily. And as the Royal Indian Navy, they help defend their homeland against Japanese invasion, keep the sea lanes open to liberate Burma, to save China. Cruisers like His Majesty's ship Delhi, destroyers like the Rajput, patrol the Bay of Bengal, the Arabian Sea, the Gulf of Mannar. Alert, efficient, ready to fight for the cause of freedom. Axis submarines, German, Italian, Japanese, prowl the Indian Ocean. An ever-constant threat to Allied convoys carrying men and supplies to China, Burma, India. The main body of the Japanese surface fleet has more than it can do to cope with the United States Navy in the Pacific. But there are Imperial submarines to spare. Across 3 vast oceans, past 3 great continents, the supplies for victory reach the docks of Calcutta. From the United States, from Great Britain, from the factories of India herself. Half a world away, the war in Europe demands and consumes millions of men, billions of supplies. Half a world away, the war in the Pacific demands and consumes more millions of men, more billions of supplies. Calcutta gets only what can be spared from democracy's ever-emptying arsenals. Cargo planes will fly a portion of the supplies into China over the Himalayan hump at the rate of 47,000 tons a month. Even so, the overwhelming mass of materiel must reach China overland, or China will perish. The problem of getting the supplies through becomes the toughest of the war, of any war in history. The first link is a ramshackle railroad that hauls the supplies north from Calcutta. The first link is the easy link. Southeast Asia overrun by the Japanese, with the Burma Road cut, Allied supplies pour from Calcutta to Lido, on the border of India. From Lido, the Allies must now hack a road out of the central Burmese jungle, fighting the enemy and nature all the way, to join up with the old Burma Road. Troops, supplies, equipment assembled to drive the Japanese from Burma, to build the road, and to lay a pipeline along the route to carry desperately needed oil and gasoline to China. But before engineers can build, armies must fight. And before armies can fight, man must wait on weather. The monsoon that storms in from the Indian Ocean at every change of season, lashing jungle and mountain with warm, paralyzing torrents of rain. Has come. A truly cosmopolitan army stands ready for the bitter ordeal ahead in Burma. Scotsmen, Irishmen, Welshmen, Americans, Australians, New Zealanders, Indians, Gurkhas, Burmese, Africans, Chinese, British. The campaign begins late in 1943. Into the jungle file the Allied troops. Into the jungle that reeks and steams with 1,000 fetid evils spread by germ and insect. Malaria, cholera, typhus, dysentery, beriberi, tropical fever. It will be a war of hunting and stalking, of ambush and infiltration, of sudden alarm by day, of strange terrors by night. Behind the combat troops come the engineers to lay their pipeline foot by foot, yard by yard, across the conquered jungle. And foot by foot, yard by yard, the road begins to creep across the conquered jungle. Tangled jungle of Burma, on the banks of the Irrawaddy, boat yards, and then boats are hewn out of the forest. Amphibious craft for the next assault, the next landing. The interior of Burma is slashed and crisscrossed by wide, tumultuous rivers almost impassable to man, but not to the men who have determined to conquer nature while conquering the Japanese. Foot, yard by yard, and then mile by mile. The men, the pipe, the road move forward toward China. Japanese units, conquerors of Singapore and Malaya, are decimated in the jungles of Burma. And the vultures, they never had it so good. Has been challenged and beaten in jungle warfare. Churchill never made a truer statement. In spite of untold hardships and frustration, in spite of the hazards of nature and the enemy, the men who made up the Allied forces in Southeast Asia meet the challenge and overcome the obstacles. Come you back, you British soldier. Come you back to Mandalay. And back they come, the British 14th Army. Meanwhile, through jungle, swamp, and forest, over ridge, hill, and mountain, across river and ravine, 2,000 miles of pipeline, an enormous artery pumping a life-giving transfusion of gasoline and oil into China. Many called it impossible. But the Lido Road becomes one of the greatest feats of construction in man's ancient endeavor to move from one place to another. The Japanese are cleared from central Burma. Now from Lido stretch highway and pipeline south and east across Burma to Lashio into China. The Lido Road, joined at last with the Burma Road, is open. In January 1945, the first convoys head for China, bearing relief for a free country from the free world. The supplies the ships brought in from assembly lines thousands of miles away roll in endless procession toward China. China. A journey of more than 3 weeks from Lido. At last, at long last, China is one with her allies. At last, at long last, the East joins hands with the West.